Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the ticking clock in all four big cases involving Trump, but especially two, because even as Trump takes it on the chin in the E. Jean Carroll case, and will take it, on both sides of the chin in the fraud case, the all important clock is trending anyway in his favor and against the very important public priority of having the electorate aware of whether the presidential candidate they're voting for is an adjudicated felon or not. So a couple developments. In first, everyone was, circling the state trial court where Justice Arthur Engoron sits yesterday saying, he said the 31st. And while I've pointed out you don't lose a half grade for each day late, nevertheless, his having said that, you would have thought if it were at all possible, he would, work round the clock to get it out on the 31st or at latest the 1st or 2nd. And we now to sort of blunt the crush of inquiry, not Engoron himself, but the court administration issued a statement saying we expect this around mid-February. So first, that big waiting game is a couple more weeks. It's not a big practical issue. Trump is still going to, I think, get socked with a very significant financial penalty that to appeal, he'll have to post a big bond. So he's looking with the punitive damages verdict in the Eugene Carroll case at maybe a 9-figure number beginning with 3, something that would strain even his own almost certainly rosy inflated assessment of his liquidity. And 2 weeks, doesn't really have a big effect. But why 2 weeks? A couple things have happened. First, we got a report. Everybody saw it, this 12-page letter from the very respected former Southern District of New York judge that Engoron asked to look over the Trump stuff, make sure they didn't do some funny shell game with the money while this trial is going on. And while recall that Engoron has ordered the potential dissolution of the certificates, essential corporate death penalty, that is up on appeal. Anyway, Jones issues her periodic report, nothing abnormal about what she's done, and finds misstatements, omissions, lack of internal controls, kind of a mess. And that's one development that could affect what Engoron is writing. A second, though, and one that fits well with the timing, this is a good point that Andrew Weissman made this morning. We have a report that you may have seen that, poor old loyal bookkeeper CFO Alan Weisselberg is set to plead guilty to perjury for what he did in this very trial, that he lied on the stand. And that, too, is something that could affect, you could really see Engoron wanting to have that as fodder for what he's writing, as something to consider in figuring out an ultimate price tag. Weisselberg's not just an independent contractor here. He's the second in command of the company. And so Engoron might think that the fact of conviction will really be material to his opinion. Now, he's not working with the DA or anything like that, but he may have good information, as the New York Times has, that Weisselberg is set to plead guilty to perjury. We'll talk about that in another YouTube, but that would be a reason for saying, okay, we need a couple weeks. So that is now the new timeline for the civil fraud trial. Significant bottom line it's going to be, and the delay is not really material or important. Cannot say that, however, about the Tanya Chutkin 1-6 election interference trial, which to my mind has always been the most important to focus on first. It best captures Trump's anti-constitutionalism, assault on the rule of law, everything that's so most repugnant about him as president. And that's a long list to choose from. So the immunity appeal was argued January 9th, and that was on the heels of a very rapid briefing schedule and argument schedule. And with that sort of rapid schedule, we could well have anticipated, as happened in other cases, like I believe Trump versus Thompson, parallel quick decision in a week or two. It ain't happening. And there's a lot of speculation about why. I've talked about that yesterday. And, as the days tick off, maybe we'll talk about it more. But just to note, Chutkin has bowed to reality and circumstances. We've had the date for the Trump trial, April 4th, on her calendar. It's now off her calendar. And in fact, there's another trial on her calendar for April 2nd. It's a January 6th trial. I don't see why, I don't see it taking up a huge time. And, we're talking about a big chunk of time at a minimum, just if it tracks the delay we've had to date as this is heard. And it sort of has to. If Chutkin now got it back tomorrow, and tried to condense the however long it's been, 25 days or whatever, into half, say, Trump lawyers would jump up and down and howl and say, you've taken this time away from us, due process problem, we have to prepare our case, et cetera. And all that would be, I think, pretty valid. So that's the minimum we're looking at. I've already given my reasons why I think the minimum might in fact be exceeded. It'll have a lot to do with what's going on. If Henderson writes separately, I do think there's it still remains no doubt that Trump loses this case, but he could do it in a way that, whether you want to say he's winning the battle and losing the war or vice versa. If the war is not being convicted by November election time, his war prospects are getting better. And indeed, if we're getting to a place where it looks as if the trial wouldn't be completed, might begin but not be completed at the election, no rule of law says you can't do it then. But if we're in the heat of the campaign and they go to Chutkin and say, come on, that's going to put Chutkin in a very, very tough spot. She's tried to say, I'm ignoring the political context, but the last 30 days before an election, that's a pretty hard thing to ignore. In any event, it's all pushing in that direction, and we'll see when the opinion comes out whether it portends additional delays, but it ain't great. All right. And then just very quickly, Alvin Bragg, his trial, that's the New York DA trial, Stormy Daniels, hush money, and therefore election lies, fraud, and election law violations. That's scheduled for March 25th. Bragg, I think, is very deferential to the other ones. He understands that his case is, like, in some ways the least consequential. But if he's got a free horizon and the others don't, he'll go for it. And right now, I think it's looking fairly likely that we're going to see that trial. It'll be really interesting. We have different polling that suggests that convictions in the other three cases could have a real dent in Trump's support. Will this? It concerns pre-presidential conduct. It feels like pretty old news. People might just dismiss it as a sort of sex case. It's really, really not. What it is an election fraud case on the American people. The whole idea of the scheme was to keep this from coming out before the election. Nevertheless, you can see how it might play And my guesstimate would be that's about a 5-week trial with the defense. You can imagine Michael Cohen having a bruising and lengthy cross-examination, but it's basically a simple case when you put it all together. Anyway, so we could well be seeing that, not the case anyone would pick first. And the question is whether it would inflame the charges of the Trump people. Oh, they're just going after him for, anything, and for an affair or whatever you'd want to say. An affair with a woman when his wife is home with their newborn child, but never mind that. But, how will it play politically? So just an asterisk there, but that's the one that looks like it might go. And then Mar-a-Lago, I think it's a really going on to sort of scandalous proportions. I think there's a judge down there, Eileen Cannon, who is really looking to play Trump's brand of slow ball, maybe herself gambling on a Trump victory, which I think would for sure, put her on the Court of Appeals, if not the Supreme Court. But that's a cut and dried case. It's a pretty serious case in its own right. It really should be coming to trial already, and she's just gumming it over and keeping it from moving with dispatch. I think we have to count on it not to move with dispatch. So that's the overall lay of the land on the all-important question of timing, and on balance, ain't great. And the one thing to note is the distinct possibility of a trial at the New York trial brought by Alvin Bragg, maybe starting late next month. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.